Good evening. It's good to see everybody and to be with you. Can you turn that down just a little bit? I probably don't even need it, to be honest with you. It's such a small crowd in here. On Sunday morning at our auditorium in Lone Oak, I get up to say good morning, they hadn't turned the mic on. I just talk a little louder, and the guy in the back said, sometimes I get people, he said, I can hear you, and sometimes when the microphone is on, I can't even hear other people with the microphone on. So I guess my wife said I'm a loudmouth. I guess that's true. So she's shaking her head up here, so. All right, so I asked my wife, I said, do you think it'd be all right if I wear my new camp shirt? So, but this doesn't really apply anymore. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of a camp update before I get started with my lesson. And not just myself, but this big guy back over here, Tim, had a lot to do with this. Starting about 6 or 7 years ago, the state came to us and said, hey, y'all need to update your cabins. We're going to take people out of them beds. They need all the wiring to redone, because if you've been to camp before, you know that a lot of those cabins that have been over there 50 years are like a chicken coop. So the health department said, y'all need to get a plan together. And the first thing they said we discovered the first thing we had to do was update our sewer problem. And I'm going to tell you what, you're trying to raise money for a sewer project, that's tough now. Nobody wants to give to a poopy situation. So, it's a hard thing, but God blessed us, and we were able to do that. And so we have a sewer system, a sewer thing in place now that camp can just continue to grow. But I just want to just give y'all an update over the past 4 years. And like I said, Tim was a big part of this. He's president during a lot of this that went on and took place. So y'all need to say kudos to him and what he did to help camp. But camp was blessed over the past 4 or 5 years. We raised $1.5 million to make all this come together. And so in May of this year, this is what camp looked like over on the boys' side where our project started. Now, y'all can watch this. This was in May of this past year. This is what it looked like in the fall. We had 8 pads poured and ready to go. And now we've got this. We've got all these cabins are ready to go here. All the boys' cabins are done. In 1 year, we built 8 houses. Now, how many people you know can build 8 houses in 1 year? That's God working with you right there. If y'all ever need Amish people to help you build something, man, they're awesome. They're great. This is some more pictures of the boys' side here. Oh, I was going to go back and show you. Just to give you perspective, if you've been to camp, so you'll understand. Up there, that left-hand corner up there, that is going down towards the boys' old cabins is where that is. So that'll give you perspective of how these are laid out. So if the road going up to the right, that goes up toward the cafeteria, the old maintenance building, the maintenance building up there, but that red dot up there is down to the left and goes toward the old boys' cabins. And matter of fact, this week, Tim, they're using 2 of those this week. Mount Juliet's up there, and they've got 315 people at camp this week. So, yeah, big group. So, and these are just some more pictures of the layout and what took place. And this is inside one of the cabins. And they're all air conditioned. You don't need to bring a fan anymore, I guess, unless you need to sleep with a fan. How many of y'all like to sleep with a fan no matter what it is? So you got to have a fan no matter what. So, all right. So I got to tell you, this shelving unit here, I went to a Byler cabinet shop and told Mr. Byler, I just need some cabinets they can put stuff on made out of plywood, and they don't have to be real fancy. Well, that's what we ended up with. I didn't want to tell him in about 2 years you won't be able to recognize them because they'll have rings on the top of them, and I didn't want to break his heart, but they're really nice, and the shelves are adjustable in them and everything. So got showers in there too. So. Oh, I will give you one little hint. If y'all go to camp for a retreat or something for all the men, well, I guess it doesn't matter because the ladies could grab cabin 16 too. The handicap shower, by the way, it got altered a little bit. One of our board members tried to pull a trick on me, and he thought I wouldn't go with it, and I went with it. He put one of those rain shower things above, he moved my plumbing so he could have a rain shower above him. I just left it there and put another faucet in. So there's 2 faucets in cabin 16 in the handicap shower, so you can just stand there forever, Got tankless water heater, so you won't ever run out of hot water, so. And so here's an aerial view that Danny Thompson did with us, which I think is pretty cool. So this shows you the boys' side. You can see over to the left going up back toward the maintenance building. And you can see the old cabin number, the blue topped one down there, the metal building, the boys' cabin. That's the first one there, down at the bottom there. And then this kind of gives you a little more perspective. The big white building, if you've never been to camp, that's our cafeteria. And so that kind of gives you a perspective of where we're at in camp. You can see the basketball court down on the left-hand side there. And then our new commons building area, the big circle with swings, was built a few years ago. This is the view with the girls' side to be able to, and so there you go. So I think that's pretty cool. So that kind of gives you an aerial view, and y'all were a big part of making all this happen. So I just wanted to take a minute and show you that with camp. Everything. Anybody got any questions about camp? Yes. Okay. They're still there for now, but they will go away eventually. We're gonna the board. I'm not gonna make that decision about what they do with them. I'm not gonna be the only one that comes down with that. The plan right now is at the last board meeting we discussed we're gonna keep 4 of the old cabins on each side for overrun because, like I said, this week Mount Juliet does have. They've got 2 of the girls' cabins, they're old girls' cabins, and they've got 2 of the boys' cabins they're using. So in Mount Juliet, they seem to just keep growing. They had 300 last year. They got 315 this year, and so they continue to grow. And it's their whole week of camp. It's the entire church, and so they've got from 3rd grade up through high school, and they've got 315 people there. So it's their they rent the facility out. It's theirs for the week. So they bring all their cooks, their staff, everybody from their church is how that makes that week happen. Last week we had Williamson County Bible Camp, which is made up of about 4 different churches out of Williamson County, which is where Franklin, Tennessee's at. So they rented out last year. They had been going to, I forgot, some church camp in Tennessee for 30, 40 years, and COVID came along, and they had all these restrictions, and so they told the board, they called, and Trisha Vaughn, who helps the board, she worshiped at Concord Road, and so they called her, and she got in touch. And anyway, they came to camp last year, and they decided they broke ties with that camp permanently. So they make camp their church home now. So they lost their week there and everything. So they really like it and everything. So and everything. So it's great because it actually brings in income for the camp that we're able to for them. So it helps us to be able to perpetuate and make camp, with all the changes that are going on at camp and every cabin being air conditioned and heated in the winter, it costs more to operate camp and all that kind of stuff. And so, does anybody have any questions about camp? We had 40 baptisms last year, and we're on our way. I think they've already had 6 or 7 this year so far. So we're on our way, and so I'm excited about what's happening with camp. We have over 1,000 campers. There's like 1,039 or something like that registered for this year. And that didn't include some of the ones from Williamson Bible Camp. One of the smaller churches, they didn't want to use the system that we have in place, so they just brought their kids. Yeah, Tim?
I just want you to understand that without you, this would happen to camp. Jamey is the
Oh, it would happen. God used somebody else. God would use somebody else. It'd be all right. Well, a lot of people work together to make it come together. There's a lot of hands and a lot of people and a lot of donors and individuals made it all come together and to make it happen. And we're continuing. We've got plans for camp in the future. We've already got a significant donation that's made to camp to build a new permanent amphitheater. And when I talk about that, it's with concrete steps and aluminum seating with backing, and it's going to be covered. That's where our new worship area will be because we've outgrown our old pavilion. I mean, if you've seen Mount Juliet's week, they're sitting all the way on the outside of it, and so because of that, and we're well on our way with that. And then, I don't know, we do a Wonderfully Made weekend now, and he's up to Wonderfully Made weekend is for any child who has an IEP at school, Down syndrome, autism, anyone in that spectrum. we take adults all the way down to children, and Noah Steele is doing that weekend. And last year they had 51 campers, and they had a baptism during his weekend. This year he's up to like 65 campers already. And it takes a lot of manpower to make that happen. And because every camper that's there, they have a buddy, and that buddy stays with them from Friday night all the way till Sunday till they leave. And so, it takes a lot of manpower to make that happen. But that weekend is just, we see that as a great opportunity. The other cool thing about that is that for the second year in a row now that we had that, we have someone who sponsored that weekend. So all those kids get to come free. So that weekend's paid for those kids. So their families can drop them off. And in the process of doing Wonderfully Made Weekend, one of the things that we did different on the boys' side that we did on the girls' side is all the boys' cabins, what we call the boys' cabins. Other weeks could use them for something different if you're renting camp out or something. But every one of those 8 cabins, 9 through 16, all have a handicap shower. They're all handicap accessible. And so that helps when you're doing Wonderfully Made Weekend. If you have kids with special needs, you don't have to say, well, we just got to, because on the girls' side, we didn't have this. So we've got one cabin on the girls' side with a handicap shower. The only negative drawback is, man, water gets everywhere with those handicap showers. But that's okay. I mean, it's on a concrete floor, and it'll clean up and everything. And so one other thing that's led out of Wonderfully Made Weekend that's come about too, and which is a need for camp, is that we're in the process of, and we've already got several donations for this too, that it's called the Oikos Project, which in Greek means family dwelling or family housing. And we're going to build, the plans are, if the Lord blesses us, where the old maintenance building is at right now, where the canteen used to be and all that, we're going to tear that down, and we're going to build an 8-room self-contained motel right there. So we'll have 8 rooms, and each room will sleep 4 people. Each room will have a handicap shower in it, because we had a couple of families last year that wanted to bring their kids, but mom didn't really feel comfortable leaving those with a buddy because didn't know them. Mom would have rather stayed with them based on their condition. And so that will give us a place to put special families like that. They can stay with their kids, but it also opens us up to have more staff housing during one of the things that we've continued to have, like during Mount Juliet's week, is because camp has grown, we've added extra interns. Well, this will allow during the regular weeks of camp, we'll have housing for the interns, and they'll be able to stay there, because like this year, the other groups have already said, well, can we move your interns? No, that's where they're going to be living for 9 weeks. They need to stay there. You know, if you had to show up every week and didn't know where you're going to sleep, that'd be frustrating if you were working somewhere. So that's going to be something we're working on to be able to do that. Camp is just being blessed by God, and people are looking for opportunities to bring their kids to a good place to have those relationships and stuff. So, but if any questions? Oh, that's okay. And I just want to tell you, when you think about God making this project come together with $1.5 million, there was a lot of things. That was just cash that we spent. That doesn't include, like, there was a company that they donated on the boys' side, and they donated 80% on the girls' side, but they donated every stitch of electrical stuff that's in these cabins. We didn't pay for one piece of wiring, one light switch, one cover, all the electricity is underground. They paid for all the piping, all the wiring. That company did that. And when I called him and said, hey, we're thinking about building an Oikos project, he said, you keep buying electrical stuff until I tell you no. When I tell you no, then we're good. Just keep buying it. And he said, you know who my provider is? And so that's the kind of people. And all the dirt work that was done by the one company, they gave us basically a 50% discount on doing all the dirt work on both sides. They came up there and spent hours moving dirt and moving trees and getting the property ready and doing all that. And we've had so many in-kind donations. The gentleman who, all these bunk beds that you see on the boys' side, now the girls' side, he got a little bit behind, but I'll talk about Tim for a minute. Tim owns Waddling they own a mill, a wood mill in Cadiz, Kentucky there. And Tim's girls and kids, they grew up going. His grandkids are now going to camp. And his dad started this wood mill. And all this lumber here, him and his employees, they cut, they put it in the kiln, they dried it, they did it, and they made all these beds by hand. And it's all his employees, and he had all their hands on it. And basically, he sold us everything that you see there at costs for camp to have. And the only thing he charged us to say, I got to pay my employees, is when we come to set them up, I need to pay them for their hours. But all that lumber there is just amazing. And I mean, if you go in those cabins, he's taken all the rough edges off all the boards. They put a lot of love into that to make it happen. So, and as I was telling you before, Sean and his son and several others helped do the girls' side and everything. But we had so many man hours in those, and Sean spent a lot of hours putting the siding on the girls' side. Well, when we had some more money come in, more donations, we decided in order to get these done we started in May of last year, and to get these done by this time, I had a contractor that had agreed at a price to come and finish the outside and finish the insides of the cabin, or camp did, and then the tornado happened, and he called me and he canceled. He says, I'm not coming. He says, I'm going to help rebuild homes because they need their homes rebuilt. And so I just, I don't know why this always happens. My wife will tell you, I wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and have these epiphanies, and I don't know why it's always in the middle of the night. And if I ever get a sermon idea, I'll get a pencil out and write it down because I'll forget if I go back to sleep. But at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, well, you know what? We're right there in the middle of the Amish. Surely somebody needs some work. And so went up there and went and asked somebody, and they recommended somebody, and then he couldn't do it, but he recommended another person, and they got them all finished and done for us ahead of time. I mean, they were done with the outsides for like 2 weeks before camp started. So it was just amazing how it all comes together and what happened. And Lord willing, next year when we come to camp, it'll all be green and outside. And we're working on getting the girls' side to get the trees over there and everything. But we planted 20 red and orange maple trees around the boys' cabins. And so in about 10 years from now, those things will get big. In the fall, it'll just be absolutely beautiful. So I'm excited and just know God's doing some great things. So any questions before I move on? Anybody think of any questions? And y'all can come to camp anytime. I think y'all know Chip Palmer. He's out there, him and Nancy, and they'll get you on. And Tim's got one too. He's got one of those. But I don't know. You might want to go on Tim's. What do you call that thing, Tim? His side-by-side. Chip's got a side-by-side or something you can get on out there, a Ranger, and take you around, show you out there what all we got going on and everything. So I encourage you to come visit. Now, don't do like a lot of folks do. They get on there and they go looking for Noah's Ark, and they end up at church camp. I've heard those stories, haven't you? You know, on our Google Maps, it says Noah's Ark where the kids play, and they look up Noah's Ark, and they click on it, and they come. We've had people from Philadelphia, Texas, California. I mean, they come from all over. Yep. We started to make some T-shirts that I came to the Ark, but it was the wrong one. WKYC. So, you know, it's real funny to see that happen. But all right. Well, let's get into our lesson. It's good to be with y'all tonight. And he was talking about it. I just told Tammy on the way up here. I said I get to officially tell them after doing youth ministry for about 25 and a half years, I'm officially out of youth ministry now. I've taken over as a new role at Lone Oak, and they said, well, what's your title? I said, well, it's called Connections Minister, but I call it do anything that they'll pay you to do. That's what I call it, you know. If I get paid, it all pays the same, so if they ask me to do it, I do it. You know, that's the way I look at it. So, well, tonight I just want to share with you for a few minutes about talking about calming the storms in our life. You know, we all have these storms that take place in our life, and sometimes we can see storms coming a long way off. And sometimes we can't see the storms coming in our life. And sometimes storms cause great devastation, as we know here in western Kentucky. We had this past December. The storms come in a form of illnesses, death in our life, or death that comes our way in our families or someone we love that we didn't expect. illness, being diagnosed with something that you didn't expect, a loss of job suddenly, or maybe loss of conflict, or maybe you have a storm when you're having a conflict with another person, a family member. Storms come our way when we least expect it. But we gotta lean on God when those storms come our way. And many times, if you're like me, a lot of times I want to try to fix the storm myself instead of letting God help me fix the storm and make it and see the peace in the middle of the storm that's going by. Speaking of storms, found this story about a man who was hitchhiking in the middle of the night in the middle of a storm. The night was rolling, the thunder was going, and there was no cars passing by as he was trying to hitchhike down the road. The storm was strong. He could hardly see a few feet ahead of him. Suddenly he saw a car coming towards him, and it stopped. The guy, without thinking, because it's pouring down rain, he simply just got in the car and closed the door, and then he realized there was nobody behind the wheel. The car started slowly. The guy looked at the road and saw a curve coming his way. Scared, he started praying and begged for his life. He hadn't come out of the shock when just before he hit the curve, a hand appeared through the window and started moving the steering wheel. The guy, paralyzed in terror, watched how the hand appeared every time just before a curve came. The guy gathered enough strength, got out of the car, and ran to the nearest town. Wet and shocked, he ran into a cantina and asked to have 2 shots of tequila. He started telling everybody about the horrible experience he went through. A silence enveloped everybody when they realized the guy wasn't crying. The guy was crying and he wasn't drunk. About a half hour later, 2 guys walked into the cantina, and one said to the other, "Look, that's the character who climbed in the car while we were pushing it." So, you never know what's going to happen in the middle of a storm. Here in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41, a storm comes up. That day when the evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There was also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." The wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" I think this is a very interesting, a very, very, very interesting story when we look at this. And we're going to continue on here in just a second. But I think it's very interesting for the fact that here they are with the one Christ, and yet they're afraid. And when we look at verse 41, it says, they were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Now, I think this is very interesting here that they say, "Who is this?" So are you telling me when I read this that they went with a guy that they didn't even know, and they left their jobs and they left their livelihood and they left their families to follow somebody they didn't even know? It's kind of interesting when you think about it that way, right? Because they really didn't know who he was as a man and what he was really going to do. But here they are in the presence of Jesus, and they've got the one who can help them. And I love what the scripture says. It says they were terrified. They were terrified, and here they've got Jesus in their presence, and they're terrified. How many times in our life have we been terrified and we forget that we've got Jesus in our presence as children of God? How many times? When storms come our way, many times we forget. And if we would simply just take a breath and remember, because we forget so quickly that he is with us. We forget so quickly, don't we, that Jesus is with us all the time. They forgot so quickly about who Jesus was and what was taking place and what was going on with him. And they were still learning, and they were still young in their ministry with Jesus, but they had already seen him do miracles, and they had already forgotten who he was and what he could do. So, what about you? When storms come your way, do you forget? We forget that God is there to help us. We forget that he is there to help us. And we forget that he is so quickly there with us. It reminds me of the story out of 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 8 and 9. And the story here about what takes place here in this story, and I'm not going to read the whole, I want to give you the context of what's taking place is that with Elisha, not Elijah, with Elisha, and that's kind of funny with me having a son named Elijah. I can't tell you how many people called him Elisha. I mean, and I would say, no, it's Elijah. And they go, Elisha? No, it's Elijah, so many times. But here, Elisha the prophet is coming to the king of Aram and was at war with Israel. And after conferring with his officers, he said, I will set up camp in such and such a place. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware of passing by the place, because the Arameans are going down there. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army of the horses and chariots surrounded the city. Oh no, my lord, what shall we do? The servant said. Don't be afraid, the prophet said. Those who are with us are more than those that are with them. Elisha in 2 Kings 6:17, Elisha prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. The Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. We forget that he's there with us in our life. And we think about this in the world we live in today. And I wake up every day thinking that stupid can't get any worse. And stupid gets worse every day, it seems like, in the world we live in today. And we've got to be reminded as children of God that we're in a storm and we're in a spiritual battle. And sometimes those storms are tough, and sometimes those storms are heavy, and there's big crashing waves on us. But we have to remember that we need to be like Elisha's servant, and we need to pray that God will open our eyes and see that he's there with us. Because he tells us in Ephesians chapter 6 that we're in a spiritual warfare in the heavenly realms. And we need to know that in our spiritual warfare, that we're in this storm of spiritual battle that's going on, that we need to know that God is there with us. In Psalm 69:1, he says, save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. God never abandons us. Have y'all ever thought, raise the hands, how many of you have ever thought, I can't handle no more? You ever been to that point? I can't handle anymore? You felt like, anybody here scared of swimming? Everybody, there's two ways in this world that I've always said, I don't want to ever die. I don't want to drown to death. I don't want to drown to die. I don't want to do that, and I don't want to be smothered. I don't like a pillow being over, But you think about water being up to here. I won't say many years ago, probably 10 years ago. Any of y'all ever floated the Ocoee River? You ever done that? Yeah, so I went whitewater rafting the Ocoee River. And we were going down it, and all the kids were like, yeah, we're going to take the rough part here, because they're like, let's do the whole thing. I said, okay, let's do the whole thing. So we're on this raft, and we're all having a ball, and it's great. And we're splashing, and we're going over the rapids and all this stuff. And then the guy says, now we're coming down to this section here that is, it's pretty rough. This is part of the Olympics section. When they had the Olympics back in 1996, he said, this is a pretty rough area down here, so y'all need to hold on. And if you've ever been whitewater rafting, they do all this training for you. They set up one of the rafts for you, and they sit down on it, and they show you how to hold it, and they want you to sit on dry ground. And they tell you, one of the things they tell you is, don't ever let go of your paddle. They express that over and over again. no matter what happens, if you fall out of that raft, don't ever let go. You hold on to your paddle no matter what. Just hold on to your paddle. That's what you, don't let go of your paddle. You got to have it. So we're cruising down through there, and we're bebopping along, and boy, everybody's having a good time. And he said, all right, here we go. We're fixing to hit the hole down here. And he reminded us again, now listen, this is where all the Olympic athletes went through and everything. And I'm thinking, okay, this ought to be fun, you know. Well, we hit that thing, and our raft, it goes up, and we're thinking it's going to go like this. No, it just keeps going up, 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 and it flips over. And we all fall out of the raft. And I'm like, I don't know about holding on to that paddle, but I let that paddle go. That paddle's out of here. I don't want to have that paddle in my hand. And I look up, and I can see daylight, but I'm under the water. And I'm like, I'm doing everything I can, man. I mean, I'm like, and I kind of come up out of the water for a second, just a split second. I hear some guy go, he's in the hole. Get him out of there. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to get out of here. And I mean, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to die. I can see air's this far from me, and I'm thinking, you know. And then I bounce up, and they're like, grab the rope, dude, grab the rope. I'm trying to remember, pick my feet up, get my rear turned this way, you know. And then I hear some guy say, yeah, let go of his paddle. He's already critiquing me, you know. And he's giving me a hard way to go. Well, they get me on. They finally reel me in, and I'm going, you know, I'm a fat boy. And he goes, all right, let's get back in the raft and go. I'm like, you're going to have to just wait just a minute. He goes, no, man, we got to go. He said, we got other people. We got other crews we got to get back to. I'm like, well, you may just have to leave me here and pick me up, dude, because, I mean, and so then they start talking. They're like, man, dude, you was in a bad spot. I'm like, really? You think I was in a bad spot? I'm in a hole doing this, and I can see it, you know. And so I know what it feels to have water up to my neck and to be, to be in that. Or maybe in your life, something's happened to you, and you're thinking you're never going to overcome this storm in life. And when I was 5 or 6 years old, my mom and dad, they left me with my meemaw. And I'll never forget it. Man, I was so upset. I mean, I love my grandma. I think she was the best in the world. She made the best pecan pie. And, but, you know, I didn't think they was ever going to make it back to me. They left me with her, and I didn't think it was going to ever happen, you know. I don't know what y'all think about that, you know. But, you know, if you ever been left somewhere and you didn't want to be there, well, that's kind of me. And so, you know, having that water up to your neck, we've all been afraid in our life. And Jesus is there. We don't need to quickly forget that he's there with us. Psalm 69, 14 and 15. Rescue me from the mire. Do not let me sink. Deliver me from those who hate me from the depths of the water. Do not let the flood waters engulf me, or the depths swallow me up, or the pit close its mouth over me. So here we can see this. And that David here says, I need you to rescue me. The king says, I've got to have God's help. Ryan Stevenson wrote a song, and I really like this song, and we talk about being in the eye of the storm. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are my anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. Anybody heard this song? This is what it's all about. We have to remind ourselves when we're in the storm, when the solid ground is falling out from underneath my feet, between the black skies and my red eyes, I can barely see. When I realize I've been sold out by my friends and my family, I can feel the rain reminding me. When my hopes and dreams are far from me and I'm running out of faith, I see the future I picture slowly fade away. And when the fears of pain and heartache are pouring down my face, I find my peace in Jesus' name. When the test comes in and the doctor says, I've only got a few months left, it's like a bitter pill I'm swallowing. I can barely take a breath. And when the addiction steals my baby girl and there's nothing I can do, my only hope is to trust in you. I trust in you, Lord. And the chorus goes, in the eye of the storm, you remain in control. And in the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when the sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. And we have to remember that he is there for us no matter what comes our way. That he doesn't abandon us. He's there with us. And I think, and I know because when I talk to folks like y'all, and I don't mean to say, one of the other things, speaking about my new job, I said, I do whatever they pay me. They said, hey, our seniors minister retired. you did youth ministry for 25 and a half years. Guess what? You can do seniors ministry now. And they said, what's the difference in seniors ministry and youth ministry? I said, well, they move a little slower, but I tell you what, they pay their bills on time. If I say, let's take a trip, and I say it's $25, 80% of you give me a check that day. So that's a lot different than teenagers, you know. So, and the other thing is, the first thing I hear every time we go to plan a trip with the seniors, let me check my doctor's schedule. Didn't hear that out of the teenagers, so totally off. That's a freebie there. We quickly forget that God is there with us to help us. In Psalm 46, 1-3, God is our refuge and strength, and even present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way, and mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the foam and the mountains quake with their surging. So, and then here in Psalms 23:4, even though I walk in the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. We need to know that God has never abandoned us. He never will abandon us. He's always there with us, and we don't need to forget that. Because when we forget that, we start to lose our perspective. And in part as being Christians is knowing that when we're in a storm of life, that He is there and His Holy Spirit's there with us to help us. And that's what helps us keep perspective. A good friend of mine named Jim Harrington that lives in Alabama, he was a mentor of mine, still a mentor of mine, but he helped me a lot when I was younger in ministry. And Jim is just such a godly man. And his wife, of 53 or 54 years, passed away a couple of weeks ago of Alzheimer's. And when I called Jim said, I just try to remember every day where she's at, and I try to keep the right perspective. You know, and he says, that's how I live every day. And, you know, when we're in that storm, that's what we have to remember, is we've got to keep the right perspective. He says in Matthew 17:20, he replied, because you have so little faith, truly I say to you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move here, from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. And I will say this, and we talked about this, and Tim can correct me, he's good at that, is that I believe when we talked about building all these new cabins at church camp, and we had some storms come our way, and we had a few difficulties, but God was always there to see us happen. And I believe it was Gary Knuckles who told us, Tim, if I remember right, he quoted this scripture right here to us and said, if we have faith, God will provide. Gary said, there are people in Western Kentucky that will provide this, and God will make it happen. He'll open it to their hearts, and it's true, and that's what took place. In James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, consider it my pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that your testing your faith produces perseverance. And this about producing the perseverance brings about perspective. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. This about being mature and complete here, I'm going to come back to that here in a second. He says, if any of you lack wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. When we think about perspective in our life and what takes place and what goes on, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Time gets by me really fast. 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with gallbladder cancer. And I had never heard of anybody being diagnosed with gallbladder cancer, but she was. And unfortunately, when you get gallbladder cancer, it's pretty much a death sentence. There's not much that can be done for it, and it's just kind of what it is, because by the time, it's one of those silent things. By the time you find it, it's just too far along. And so my mom and I, we had a lot of conversations about end-of-life stuff. And my mom said to me, she said, don't worry about me. She said, I got it. It's all good. And that's when a storm like that comes your way, and when your mother can look at you and goes, don't worry about me. It's all good with me. I know where I'm going. You know the perseverance, and you know the mature, that you become mature and it's complete, because you understand the big picture. You understand what it's about. And I will say this, about when you get in storms of life, and I know that many of y'all have lived life a lot much more than I have, and y'all been through a lot of storms, and y'all have a lot of perspective. And so what I would encourage you as being older folks, don't hide your faith. Share it with younger folks. When you see younger folks, when you see people like me, I'm just 50. I still feel like I'm pretty young, but I know it's catching up with me. I wake up some days and I can't walk as good as I could the day before. But I know as I get older. But what I'm saying to y'all is, if y'all see younger Christians, the Bible talks about the older mentoring, sharing wisdom with those younger. When you see them going through storms of life, go put your arms around them. Tell them you love them. Tell them you're going to make it through them. Share some of those storms you've been through in life, and God saw your way through it. That's how we encourage each other as children of God. Because he says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. And the reason why we can have a good perspective in life is that all things work to the good of those who love him. And he tells us in Romans 8, 1 and 2, one of my preachers that I worked with, first one, Mike Tenero, this is one of his favorite verses of all the Bible. There's therefore no now condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, because through Christ Jesus, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. And Mike would remind me all the time, remember, Jamey, there's no condemnation who walk with Jesus. And so when we're going through the storms of life, let us remember that when we're children of God, there's no condemnation. It'll be all right on the other side. So, thank y'all. Appreciate y'all letting me come again. And Tim didn't sleep too much over there tonight. He did all right. I'll turn it over to whoever it goes to from here.